Okay, so you've had a really intense 2 weeks. You guys have been learning for around 8 to 9 hours a day. What I want to do here is try to give you a framework where you can digest a lot of the stuff that you learned. I call this presentation The Evolution of Consciousness. And what you're going to learn here is a map for understanding your personal growth. The reason I picked this particular presentation, and I'm doing it in this particular style, is because 50 years ago to this coming week, literally to this coming week, as in Monday tomorrow, something interesting happened. It was 1968, and on CBS television, a man called Alan Watts made one of his first appearances. That's what the footage looked like. It was CBS television. It was a program called Camera 3, and Alan Watts went on with a group of students.
What's the matter with this?
To teach his unique philosophy of Zen to America.
Yeah.
Now, in that program, Alan Watts asked people these 3 questions. He said, if you ponder these questions enough, it unlocks a lot of new meaning in your life. The questions are, who am I? What do I desire? And what do I know? Now, these questions sound simple enough, right? But it goes way deeper. Last week, I was with Alan's son, Mark Watts. It was me, the Mindvalley team, and Mark's team. We are working on a new quest with Alan Watts. And this quest goes deep into these questions plus 2 additional questions. But Mark explained to me why these questions were so profound. And these questions are why people today, hundreds of millions of people, love Alan Watts. Alan Watts fans in the house, raise your hand and make some noise. He's so influential, Volvo just used one of his talks in one of their advertisements. This was like 6 months ago. Now, the reason these questions are important, according to Mark Watts, is that there's a Sanskrit term called upaya. And upaya really means to get back in flow. So Mark explained it this way. He says, imagine in India, there's this wild river flowing, and the boatmen there know exactly where to aim their boat so that when they take off from their part of the bank, they can gently navigate through the flow of the river, through all the rocks and danger points, and hit the opposite bank. That is upaya. It's knowing where to it's being pointed in the right direction so that no matter how dangerous the rapids are or whatever rocks come in the way, you end up going to where you want to go. And he said these 5 questions are like upaya for your soul, for your mind. When you truly, truly, truly reflect and answer these 5 Zen questions, no matter what crap comes your way, you know how to navigate that and get back to flow. You guys get me? Yes. So, now let's take what Alan Watts was speaking about and connect it with a model that you guys know as Mindvalley students. And that is the model from my book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, where I talk about the 4 different levels of evolution. Because as I was there listening to Mark, I realized that those 3 questions, you would answer them differently depending on where you are in this particular model of conscious evolution. So first, let me explain this model. This model basically says that at each level of your conscious evolution, you react to the world and shape the world in different ways. So let's go deeper, right? Many people in the world today, the majority of human beings exist at level 1. They are living in what we call the culturescape. And at this level, the world happens to them. But at a certain point, people start questioning. They start waking up. They go to level 2. I call that the awakening. This is where they realize that you can choose certain experiences in the world. Now, when you do that enough, you go to level 3. Level 3 is called recoding yourself. This is where you realize that, wait a minute, the world isn't just outside you. The world is inside you as well. And you start paying attention to your inner world. As soon as you start going within, this opens you up to level 4. And level 4 is where I say you really start becoming extraordinary. Level 4 is where an important shift happens that completely transforms how you live your life. And it puts you in perhaps what could be the 1 to 5% of human beings in the world today who are truly fulfilled, happy, and giving back. We'll explore that in a moment. First, let's look at the 3 questions, right? Who am I? What do I desire? What do I know? Who am I? What do I desire? What do I know? And in each of these levels, we're going to ask these three questions. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that connects what Alan said to modern science, modern philosophers, and many of our teachers here at Mindvalley. Let's start with level one, the culturescape. So the culturescape is that tangled web of rituals, of beliefs, of ideas that come from culture. Whether you live in a tribe in some developing part of the world, or you live in a modern tribe, such as a corporation, all of us are part of this culturescape. In other words, the world that we exist in is really a world that is happening cognitively in our minds based on beliefs, rituals, culture, social indoctrination, and what our mom and our dad and our media and our priest and our teachers and our preachers tell us to be, do, and think. That's the culturescape. But we don't see that because like a fish swimming in water, we don't realize that the rules in which we live life are not necessarily true for everyone else. They're only true for us because of our conditioning. Now, the problem with this culturescape is that many people believe it's real, and thus they become a victim of the culturescape. The things that happen to them, a breakup, a business failure, being hospitalized, severely influence them. The world happens to them. Now, the interesting thing is, Alan Watts said, none of this stuff is real. In fact, there's a famous lecture by Alan Watts. I'm going to play you a minute of that where he says this: there is no such thing as a thing. 9 to 5 is a thing. No such thing. Marriage, religion, God, mindfulness, none of these exist. They are simply ideas in our head. Listen to Alan explain it in his cool accent.
And so what I would call a kind of a basic problem we've got to go through first is to understand that there are no such things as things. That is to say, separate things or separate events. That is only a way of talking. And if you can understand this, you're going to have no further problems. I once asked a group of high school children, what do you mean by a thing? And first of all, they gave me all sorts of synonyms. They said it's an object, which is simply another word for a thing. It doesn't tell you anything about what you mean by a thing. And finally, a very smart girl from Italy who was in the group said a thing is a noun. And she was quite right. A noun isn't a part of nature, it's a part of speech. There are no nouns in the physical world. There are no separate things in the physical world either. See, the physical world is wiggly. The clouds, mountains, trees, people are all wiggly. And only when human beings get working at things, they build buildings in straight lines and try and make out that the world isn't really wiggly. But here are we sitting in this room all built on straight lines, but each one of us is as wiggly as all get out.
So there's no such thing as a thing. Think about it. Everything that we often label a thing only exists because it is a noun in our heads. Now, this sounds philosophical, right? But what if modern science is now saying that's true? I want to introduce you to a really fascinating idea. So, let me explain it this way. Our ears hear the sounds of the world around us, right? We hear the sounds outside us. But what if we could hear the sounds inside our body? Now, if you could hear the sounds inside your body, it would be really, really, really messy. You'd hear your heartbeat, you'd hear your lungs breathing, you'd hear your hormones going in all directions, you'd hear blood flowing through your body, you might hear your kidneys doing what kidneys do, and your liver doing what livers do, and your stomach juices churning. It would be messy, and you wouldn't be able to concentrate on anything else. And so how do we evolve? We evolve to listen to what's going on outside, but not to listen to what's going on inside. Or do we? Because one scientist suggests that we do listen to what's going on inside. We just don't hear it as sounds. We hear it as emotion. Your emotions are governed by what's going on inside you. And then we give a label to these emotions: jealousy, anger, hate, joy, happiness, but it's nothing more than what's going on inside you. Now, as crazy as this sounds, I've got to share this with you. This is a picture of Tahiti. In Tahitian culture, there is no word for sadness. In fact, there's a famous book called On Emotions by a scientist called Lisa Feldman Barrett. And she says in our culture, meaning the US culture, we have sadness. But in Tahitian culture, they don't have that. Instead, they have a word whose closest translation would be the kind of fatigue you feel when you have the flu. Imagine that. There is no sadness. Now, what she's saying is even deeper than this. What she's saying is that emotions are not a thing. Just as Alan Watts said, emotions are not a thing. In fact, there are only 4 different emotions. There is unpleasant, pleasant, arousal, or calm. Arousal, calm, pleasant, unpleasant. And everything we feel in the world that we give a label to is really the intersection of these 4 basic emotions, which are based on the chemistry going on in our body. So check this out. This might be jealousy to American culture. To a different culture, they might label it different. You're feeling unpleasant, more unpleasant than pleasant, but still slightly aroused by an object someone else has. Jealousy. This might be the emotions you feel on a first date. Arousal, you're feeling pleasant. A little bit of unpleasant there, you're wondering if you're doing things okay, and you're mostly jittery, so you're not so calm. All that's going on is these 4 emotions grow and shrink within our bodies, and then we give it a name, and that name defines how we experience it. Now, Lisa Barrett goes on to say this. She says, if you know the word for an emotion, if you hear the word often, then it becomes much more automatic. Just like driving a car, it gets triggered more easily, and you can feel it more easily. In short, would we experience jealousy if there was no English word for jealousy? Would we experience hate if there was no word for hate? It's an interesting question to ask ourselves. But this idea of a thing not being a thing goes on to everything that we do in the world. Every construct of human society that we often give a name to. So, in this first stage of consciousness, the mistake that people make is that they associate who am I with a thing. Who am I is your vocation. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm a meditation instructor. Then they associate what do I desire with a thing. Well, I want love. I want wealth. Those are things that don't really exist in the real world. Then they associate what do I know with a thing. I want to be peaceful. I know that I am a kind person. I know that God has my side. But kindness, God, they don't exist. They are nothing more than labels that we have given things that we have created in the culturescape. You see how this works? Basically, like the ancient Indians said, we are living in an illusion or Maya. And when you go as deep into this philosophy, you start to see that illusion. And this is what happens next. You go into what is generally an awakening. You start to understand that this illusion is only there because you're blindly following the language and the culture of your forefathers and the media and the politicians and the newspapers and mom and dad. Now, this illusion is so pervasive that the words that you learn as a child determine what you see in life. So check this out. There was a study that showed that certain cultures cannot see colors the way we see them. So there was a famous podcast, and in the podcast they spoke about this phenomenon that this historian was studying, where in the ancient world there was no word for the color blue. And he asked, did people see blue 2,000 years ago? Because if you look at Homer's Iliad, right, which was written around 2,300 years ago, there is no mention of the color blue. The sea is referred to as the wine dark sea. No mention of blue. You look at ancient Chinese texts, no mention of blue. So does blue exist? So he wanted to figure this out. So he went to this tribe called the Himba tribe in Namibia. And he showed them this television screen with these green squares. And can you see the blue square? Say yes if you can see the blue square. Well, guess what? The Himba people, they could not see the blue square. They couldn't pick it out. They have no word for the color blue. But they have over a dozen words for the color green. So when he showed the Himba people this slide, they could instantly see which square was a slightly off shade of green. Can you guys see the square with the off shade of green? I like how you flip-flop, right? Yes, no. But the Himba people could instantly see that. Again, they have more words for the color green, less words for the color blue. Now, it's the same with Russian speakers. Russian speakers have 2 different words for the color blue. Any Russian speakers in the house? Okay, what is shout out the 2 Russian words for the color blue? Sini and igolobloy. Something and something. But Russians have 2 words for the color blue. Scientists show that Russians are 5% better at identifying shades of blue than Americans and other English speakers, right? So the words we get used to govern what we see in the world, which raises the question, bad emotions that we feel, are we simply feeling them because our parents gave that emotion a name? Do you really see something if you don't have a word for it? Now, when you start understanding this, you start to see that we exist in a world that is filled with bullshit rules or brules. And these rules govern so many things about how life is meant to work. And so I want to introduce you to another Zen philosopher. This guy has a different take on it. And his take allowed him to do some really amazing things in the world. Listen to this Zen philosopher.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. That's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again.
You guys know who that Zen philosopher is? Scream it out, right? That Zen philosopher so questioned the walls, the artificial walls of the world around us, he went to create things that you guys now carry in your pants, such as the iPhone, right? But the interesting thing is, look, listen to what he said. He said, you are told not to bash into the walls too much. But pretty soon you realize that all of these rules were made up by people no smarter than you, and you can question them, you can challenge them, you can build your own things that people can use. And that's where, at this stage of awakening, questioning starts entering your mind. But we are so trained as a culture to not question. How many of you here as kids, when you ask questions, you know how kids go, they're like, why? And your parents are always going to say, because I told you so. And so we're trained to not ask these questions. At level 2, though, you start going back to that childhood nature of questioning. You start realizing the world is bendable. You don't like the 9 to 5, great. You start your own company or you introduce flexi time. You don't like religion, no problem. You join Mindvalley and just learn from spiritual teachers. Life can happen to you or life can happen from you. And at this world, at this level, life is emerging from you. You are creating the world as you want to see it. You don't like the university system, you create Mindvalley U. You don't like the way mobile phones work, you create the iPhone. Now, it doesn't have to be something as big as that. It could be the way you hack your education. It could be the way you start your business. It could be the way you told your parents that you were not going to blindly follow their fundamentalist religious ideas, even though they had been part of your family for 300 years. You create your own rules. And this is when this great awakening starts happening. So all of us have beliefs about the world. The thing about beliefs is this, right? Your beliefs are not you. We confuse our beliefs with who we are. Rather, your beliefs possess you. All your beliefs about the world are implanted in you by society, by media, by parents, by preachers, by teachers, by religion, by dogma, by culture. And you can pluck out those beliefs. And when you start doing that, you really start questioning the rules. Michael Beckwith said it best yesterday. He said this, the world as you see it is an artifact of a previously held point of view. Your eyes are always looking at the past. Everything we see in this room, as we get out of this room, as we go home, as we survive in the world, as we go to our jobs, it's looking at artifacts of the past. And at this level, the level of awakening, you come to see that. And so you're constantly thinking about how can you create a new world that suits how you want to live life. And so you know that thing about how thoughts create reality? At this point, it's true. And it's not the mumbo-jumbo version of your mind creating reality. Not that that's not real. Here your thoughts are actually creating reality because you are questioning the cognitive plane. You are questioning the rules and the assumptions and the cultures and the beliefs that we hold on to so tightly, thinking they are real. Many of these have hit their expiration date, but people still leave it in their fridge like sour milk. Now what you're doing is opening the refrigerator door, looking at what rules, what beliefs have hit that expiration date and discarding it, and then creating your own stuff to put in that refrigerator. Now, we come to the 3 questions. Who am I? What do I desire? What do I know? And you find that how you answer these questions is really, really, really different. Who am I? You may no longer be a traditional vocation. You may decide that you are a philosopher mystic, or you are a tribe builder engineer. You're creating your own vocations. What do I desire? Often you desire things that other people do not desire because their desires are coming from this rule book of the culturescape. You have your 3 most important questions. You have your life book. You want to create a new life for yourself. But the biggest question that really, really, really gets addressed when you hit this level is, what do I know? What do I know? Alan Watts suggests an exercise. He calls it the 2 list. He says, make a list, and please do this when you get home. Make a list of everything that you know because you experienced it. And then make a list of everything that you know because someone told you it was true. It's a really interesting exercise because pretty soon you understand that so many things that you think are true are only true because someone told you they were true. Somebody told you that you need to own a car. Somebody told you that you need to send your kids to school. Somebody told you that your body is going to be prone to aging. Somebody told you that obesity was in your genetics. What is it that you know that is true because you experienced it directly? And what do you know is true because you were programmed and you had a belief installed in you? That is level 2. Now the funny thing happens, right? When you go into level 2, that's when you really start embracing personal growth. One of the great things about the people in this room is there are very few people here who are in level 1. And if you are, it's okay. It's all part of growing up. Most people in this room are at level 2. You came here because something about how Mindvalley questioned the world attracted you. And you decided to buy a ticket, get on a plane, and get your butt in that seat, right? How many of you here came here because you were drawn to something that you heard me say or that a Mindvalley teacher said that was against the rules of the culturescape? Make some noise. Awesome. Most of you are at level 2 or higher. Now, the unique thing about this room is that many of you have actually already gone to level 3. So level 3 is called recoding yourself. See, the more you start questioning the rules, ultimately, and the more you decide that you can shift the world around you, at least in the cognitive plane, what happens is that you start understanding that there is a world within you. And that world within you is as real. That spirit, that soul, the intuition within you. How many of you here have a meditation practice? Look at the number of hands, right? How many of you here believe in some form of spirituality? This is a sign that you're moving towards level 3. Now, one of the interesting things about level 3 that I believe our education system completely ignores is the idea of intuition. It's the idea of knowing that comes from within. Now, Emily Fletcher, whom you saw on stage earlier, explains it best. I want to play this 2-minute video of Emily telling you what intuition is about.
So intuition is one of these words that people throw around a lot, and I'm not sure how many people really are practicing or cultivating the skills to be able to hear your intuition on a daily basis. And if you ask every high performer, every super successful CEO, every entrepreneur, how did you come up with this idea? How did you know to turn right instead of turning left? And they say, it was just my intuition. I just had this feeling in my gut. And so this sort of elusive gut thing can be like, well, how do I hear hear it? How do I know? And so here's the reality. If you don't have a daily meditation practice, then it's very hard to tell the difference between your critical mind and your intuitive mind. Right? It's like our left brain critical mind is always screaming at us, like, I suck, I suck, I suck. I'm going to die alone with cats eating my face. And it's very hard to hear your intuition while your critical mind is screaming at you, because your intuition whispers. It's like, write that book, call that guy, start that company. And if you've got this screaming, I suck, I suck, I suck voice happening all the time, how are you supposed to hear that intuitive voice? And so what meditation does is that we actually start practicing taking our right brain to the gym every single day. And your right brain is the piece of you that is in charge of intuition. It's the piece of you that actually connects to collective intelligence, right? Like, I like to think about intuition and creativity as a Wi-Fi network, and our right brain is the router. Our right brain is the piece of us that allows us to connect to the collective intelligence. Now, the left brain is the actual computer. Right now, you could have the fanciest computer, you could have the most developed intellect, you could have such an incredible life experience, but imagine how much good a computer is going to do you just sitting there not connected to the internet. Now imagine you connect that computer to the internet, how much smarter does it become? How much more capable does it become? Because you're exchanging ideas, you're able to intuit other people's desires, you're able to hear how nature actually wants to use you to deliver your fulfillment.
So when you start going within at level 3, you start recognizing that you're more than just a physical body, that there are these abilities within you, intuition being one of them, and this helps guide you. Now, a big shift happens in question 1, who am I? You're no longer the doctor, you're no longer the tribe-building engineer, you are a soul having a human experience. Things shift very, very, very rapidly, but I want to bring back Alan with his smooth, sexy British voice and these beautiful visuals that a YouTuber put up around that voice to share his vision of how you would answer this question, who am I? Feel free to keep your eyes open to watch the visuals or to close your eyes and just meditate on the voice.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me. And since you're all here and engaged in this sort of inquiry and listening to this sort of lecture, I assume that you're all on the process of waking up. Or else you're teasing yourselves with some kind of flirtation with waking up, which you're not serious about. But I assume maybe you are, not serious but sincere, that you are ready to wake up. So then, when you're in the way of waking up and finding out who you really are, what you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real deep down you is the whole universe. So then, when you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence, because that's not an experience. A lot of people are afraid that when they die, they're going to be locked up in a dark room forever. And sort of undergo that. But one of the most interesting things in the world, this is a yoga, this is a way of realization. Try and imagine what it will be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Think about that. Children think about it. It's one of the great wonders of life. What will it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? And if you think long enough about that, something will happen to you. You will find out, among other things, that it'll pose the next question to you. What was it like to wake up after having never gone to sleep? That was when you were born. You see, you can't have an experience of nothing. Nature abhors a vacuum. So after you're dead, the only thing that can happen is the same experience, or the same sort of experience as when you were born. In other words, we all know very well that after people die, other people are born. And they're all you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. Everybody is I. You all know you're you. And wheresoever beings exist throughout all galaxies, it doesn't make any difference. You are all of them. And when they come into being, that's you coming into being. You know that very well. Only you don't have to remember the past. In the same way, you don't have to think about how you work your thyroid gland or whatever else it is in your organism. You don't have to know how to shine the sun. You just do it. Like you breathe. Doesn't it really astonish you that you are this fantastically complex thing? And that you're doing all of this and you never had any education in how to do it?
Wasn't that beautiful? So as you can see, that first question fundamentally shifts. But as we start going more and more and more within, and we're now balancing us playing in the outside world and us playing in the inside world, we move to level 4, becoming extraordinary. And this is the next step for many of you guys. You guys are already so ahead of the masses of people on planet Earth. You've gone from level 1 to level 2. You've learned to question the culturescape. Many of you now have a spiritual practice. You understand that you're more than just your physical body. Level 4 is where we want you to get to next. Level 4 is what we call becoming extraordinary. Now, what happens at level 4? Well, something funny happens the more you meditate. The more you practice these spiritual practices, the more you realize that you're more than your physical body. At the same time, you realize that you are so much beyond your body, and that you really extends to all other human beings and all life, and in fact, the entire planet. You really is a part of a greater whole, unity. And to explain this idea, I want to bring in Neil Donald Walsh. You see, in Conversations with God, Book 3, Neil said something really interesting that I always remembered. Even though I read that book like 20 years ago. He said, the number one value of advanced civilizations, the one thing that gets them to that level of being an advanced civilization, that eradicates war, that eradicates poverty, that makes living so much a joy, is this one idea, unity. There is only us. Let's hear Neil say that.
It's very powerful for us to embrace the notion of no separation, the notion of unity, because suddenly we begin to live and to experience life in a dramatically different way. We see everyone else as part of us, and everything else as part of us as well. And that includes that essence of life that some people call God. And so we begin to see things differently, to act differently, to react differently, and to experience ourselves in a brand new way, a way that can change your life forever. It would take me far too long to describe the benefits of that, but I'll give you an idea. Try it. Just try it for 24 hours. Imagine that everyone else who crosses your path is an extension of you, is one of the wonderful fingers on the hand that you are. And imagine that everything that you think and say and do with regard to that person, you're thinking and saying and doing with regard to yourself. And as you begin to change the way you interact with other people, you will discover the powerful, powerful benefits of the notion of unity. This is the single idea that could change the world virtually overnight and make everything better than we ever imagined it could possibly be. It could, in fact, produce heaven on earth. So if you'd like to have one single tool that could advance your spiritual evolution overnight, this is the tool. Unity, the oneness of all things. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your experience of oneness.
So now the magic happens, right? As Neil said, as we start embracing this idea of unity, we realize we are one race, the human race. We realize that how we vote, how we start a business, has to start acknowledging this. We have to stop embracing politicians who try to gain votes by telling us that we are separate from other people, whether they are Britain versus Europeans or Americans versus Mexicans. We have to go for the politicians that speak of unity. It's not easy because there's a deep part of our brain, the amygdala, that has evolved to fear people who look different. It's actually part of our evolutionary bias. But as you go into level 3 and you start tapping into your soul, you learn to overwrite that. And unity is that answer. Unity should be the number one principle we teach our children. That yes, they can embrace the flag of their country, but that we really as a species need an earth flag. That we should start tossing away ideas that create separation, that one culture is better than another, or that our religion is the most efficient one, or that we are the chosen people. And the more you care, the more you expand your circle of compassion to other people in the world, something interesting happens. The greater the opportunity that the universe gives you, because this is the unique quality of level 4. I call it inspiration leading to intention. See, at level 1 and level 2, you have goals. And I heard someone earlier here ask Deborah King, say, I have a problem, I don't have any goals. I'll explain what's going on there. At level 1 and level 2, our society teaches us to have goals. We have a checklist. I want to get this good job. I want to have this much saved for retirement. I want to travel the world. We have goals. But these goals are coming from the culturescape. When you get to level 2, the goals come from your soul. They're coming from your spirit. But when you get to level 4, the goals are coming from a completely different place. They're coming from inspiration. Now, what is that inspiration? You could call it God, you could call it the universe, you could call it your superconscious. But inspiration leads to intention. You think you came up with the brilliant idea for that book, or you came up with that brilliant idea for that new program, or you were the genius who came up with the idea for your business, but you were not. You were simply the conduit. You have a boss, and that boss has been whispering in your ear, and she's been telling you and pushing you and inspiring you to make that happen. The inspiration leads to your intention. And then this boss, she's there for you. She clears the roadblocks when you start showing that you have intent and you're going to start moving towards it. So, you don't set goals that are coming directly from you. You hear whispers, as Emily said. You have these little intuitive nudges. You might be showering or waking up in the morning and boom, the idea for that next blog post, or the idea for that next product you have to build, or the idea for that next cause you have to serve. It just hits you. This is inspiration leading to intention, and this is when you know you are on the right path. Now, when you do this, something else interesting happens. You see, this boss, she doesn't just whisper to you, she clears the way for you. As soon as you show that you're going to take that nudge and act on it, and that you have the confidence to make it happen, luck starts happening on your side. So there are a couple of unique qualities of this state. And Emily Fletcher shares a really interesting story, right, of what happens when you start listening to this inspiration. She was telling me about Michael Jackson and how Michael Jackson would wake up at 3 a.m. and call his manager and go, butterflies, butterflies. And his manager's like, Michael, what the hell is going on? It's 3 a.m. And Michael goes, I got this idea for a song. It's about butterflies. I got to write it now. And the manager goes, Michael, it's 3 a.m. Can this wait till tomorrow morning? And Michael goes, no, if I don't write it, Prince will. You see, the universe doesn't play favorites. If she's giving you an idea and you don't listen, she'll just go to someone else. There are like 7.5 other billion meat bodies on the planet. So you want to get to this state. You want to be the person who acts on that inspiration. If I didn't start Mindvalley U, someone else would have. If I didn't start Mindvalley, someone else would have. Because it didn't come from me. I was simply a good listener. What are you listening to? Are you acting on it? Are you going to take that nudge and follow through with it, knowing that somebody has your back? So when you get to this state, there are a couple of different qualities that start emerging, right? I wrote about this in my book. I basically said that we are particles of God having a human experience. We are a particle of God, and I call it a godicle. So we are all godicles here on planet Earth, playing God within our own cognitive plane. So when you start getting to this level 4, this is what happens. First, you have a deep sense of connectedness with all life, with all human beings. Now, this sense of connectedness with all life opens you up to intuition because you're tuned in, you're tapped in. Third, this intuition gives you inspiration, and this inspiration leads to your intention. And fourth, because you are following through on inspired ideas, luck is on your side. Your boss clears the way for you. So when I think of myself as an entrepreneur, it's kind of a conflicting thought because I don't feel I run Mindvalley. I feel I work for Mindvalley. I feel I'm taking marching orders from a higher power that nudges me in terms of what to do. And I constantly try to listen and act on this. In my book, I drew this diagram. Connectedness leads to intuitive insight, leads to being pulled by a vision, leads to a feeling of luck, which leads to further connectedness, which leads to intuitive insight, which leads to being pulled by a vision. Now, I use the word pulled by a vision for a specific reason, right? Michael Beckwith, whom you heard yesterday, said, motivation is rubbish. We need motivation because we need someone to kick our butt to motivate us to chase those goals that we never really feel we need to do as a soul in the first place. So you can be pushed towards a vision if you're in level 1 or 2. But when you get to this level, you don't need motivation. You are pulled by a vision. It's a complete reversal. You don't need someone to crack the whip on you. You wake up every day pulled by a vision because that vision is coming through you. Connectedness, intuition, inspired action, and luck. So when we talk about people who seem lucky, who seem to have it all, when we talk about the people who are tapped in, the great artists, the great musicians, the great authors, the great entrepreneurs, luck seems on their side. But really, now you know a formula to get there. You have that boss, and you're listening to that inspired action. So you have these 4 qualities of the state. Now, when you know this, you understand how to make a dent in the universe. This is where it gets really interesting. So think of that circle as the culturescape, and think of the dots as everyone else. Every now and then, one of you starts gravitating towards the edges of the circle. And you'll be criticized. You're the misfit, you're the rebel, you're the troublemaker. Criticized by your family, or your corporation, or your society. You can't do that. You can't play too close to the edges. But then, you follow that inspired action. And you create something new. Remember, everything is just a thing, right? You've just created your own new thing. And you push forth the boundary of the circle. And that's the dent in the universe. And now, guess what? They label you a visionary. All of you can start using this formula to become a visionary. It's not that hard. So this is where the middle question in Alan's 3 great questions really comes true, right? What do I desire? So I was asking this when I was interviewing the Alan Watts team. And Justin, are you in the room? Please stand up, Justin. So that's Justin. Justin, run on stage with me. Justin is part of the Alan Watts team. And come up. So Justin is part of the Alan Watts team. And
I'm barefoot again. By the
no
way,
worries,
like
Justin. Yeah. If you follow Alan Watts, you don't need shoes. Shoes are just a thing. Can we get a mic for Justin? So I was interviewing Justin and his partner, Mariah, right? And I asked Mariah, what do you desire? And she said this. She said, look, at a certain point, there were things I wanted, but now I don't desire anything. I want to live in that space of not desiring anything because I know I want to see what the universe unfolds for me. Does that make sense to you guys? And many of you get there, and then you feel guilty. You feel, oh, I don't have goals. But there's nothing wrong with living like that if you're living a life at level 4 and truly serving. Thank you, Justin, for helping me with all the videos in here and for helping bring Alan Watts' legacy to the world. Please give him a round of applause. Thanks. You will see Justin in the new Alan Watts program. Okay? Thanks, yeah. The mission-oriented life is not just giving you meaning. It rewards you with so much more. When you think about people like Elon Musk, the great musicians, the great entrepreneurs, you often find that at some point in their life, they followed a nudge, they followed a hint. Elon, in his story, woke up one day in the middle of the night with an idea on how to create a better rocket. People like John Lennon would often see the lyrics for their greatest music in their dreams. Now, you don't have to be a Lennon or a Musk. You can be running an organic farm. You can be writing a children's book. You can decide that you want to be a full-time parent. You can still listen and do good in the world. And when you do it like that, you really, really, really start to make a massive impact. I want to play this final video for you. And I'm sure you know this lady. Listen to her closing advice.
But I want to invite you. I want to invite you to start dreaming like you've never dreamed before, producing like you've never produced before, staying in action like you've never stayed before, and seeing the man, the woman you've never even seen before. And I will always be there to cheer you on. I will always be there to remind you of possibility and prosperity are your birthright. So I invite you to go, dream big, disrupt the norm, agitate mediocrity. Agitate it, disrupt it, make it uncomfortable in your presence. Walk into a room and let your light shine bright. And when people can't handle your light, don't dim your light. Hand them some shades.
Awesome. I love that.
And I'll continue to dream big with you.
So as we wrap up today, remember, go forth, be a visionary. Don't take no for an answer. Question the rules and live life on your terms as you make a dent in the culturescape and create new things, things that truly give you joy, that you're truly excited about, that make the world better for all of us in unity. Thank you.